Polls in Arizona close in a matter of minutes, and it is a state that is obviously vitally important because it could play a role both in deciding who wins the White House, but also which party controls the Senate come November. It is a state that has become a hotbed of election denialism, as we have followed closely. That is why CNN's senior data reporter, Harry Enton, is here. And Harry, I think this is really interesting because this is a series of primaries that are playing in Arizona that can tell us, are Republican voters choosing candidates who still push election denialism, or are they going in a different direction?
I mean, and you see that very well in the United States Senate race in that state, right? Kari Lake, who, of course, lost the gubernatorial race there in 2022 and basically would not admit that, in fact, she lost that race to Katie Hobbs, and she is right now the favorite to get that Republican nomination in the state of Arizona. And I think it's sort of emblematic of the Republican Party's problems in that state. And you can see that very well in their electoral history in Senate races, right? Pre-Trump era, they basically were on a roll. They hadn't lost a race since, I believe, 1988. They had won 100% of the Senate races. Since that point, they've won, get this, 0%. And it is partially because they put up extreme candidates like they're probably going to do tonight with Kari Lake. And it's one of those races where Democrats need to win it. And if Kari Lake's the nominee, they're likely going to win it.
Well, and she may be the best known election denier in Arizona, which I guess is taking the cake since there are a lot of people who've been indicted there in that. But there are other election deniers that are also on the ballot tonight.
That's absolutely right. You know, you could go to Arizona's 8th district where you have Abe Hamadeh on there. You have Blake Masters on there, the Maricopa County Recorder's office, where the incumbent is actually non-election denier. He's actually someone who believes in the sanctity of our elections, believes that the votes that actually get counted are real votes, which of course is what we should believe in. So the fact is we see this across sort of the spectrum where you see people who actually believe in our elections getting challenged by election denialism, or those who are at least floating with it, and those who are election denialism or believe in election denialism basically have easy rides to U.S. Senate nominations, perhaps ones that they shouldn't necessarily get.
Okay, but you just mentioned District 8. Can we please talk about what's happening there where 2 people have been endorsed by Donald Trump?
Yes. So Abe Hamadeh, who ran for Attorney General last time, got endorsed by Donald Trump. And then in the closing days of the campaign, Blake Masters, who of course ran for the United States Senate, another election denial guy, then also got endorsed by Donald Trump. It's almost as if Donald Trump can't lose, and maybe it's because his endorsement hasn't been as good lately, right? Before June, he had won, or none of the people he endorsed lost. 4 of them lost in June.
Can you endorse 2 people in one race?
Sure, you can. Why not? You can endorse whoever you want. Trump is going to make sure he automatically wins. Trump always wins, baby.
Well, we'll see if that's true.
We'll see if that's true.
Harry Enton always wins. Harry, thank you for that. We'll continue tracking all of those races here. Thank you for joining us. CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillip starts now.
It's primary day in Arizona, and we have early results from the battleground state. Kari Lake is the projected winner of the Republican Senate primary. And we can also report that the closely watched primary for House District 8 is still too close to call. Now, the Grand Canyon state has been ground zero for election denialism the last 2 cycles. And this time around, the largest county isn't taking any chances. Maricopa County invested $15 million in new equipment in an effort to deliver quicker results and tamp down skepticism. David Plouffe and Stuart Stevens are still with us. David, what are you looking for tonight in these returns?
Well, as we think about the presidential race, Simone, I mean, Kari Lake will be on the ballot. And that is bad news for Donald Trump. It's got some similarities to North Carolina and their gubernatorial candidate, Robinson, who I think is going to be a real problem in terms of, voter behavior in those states. So I think that you've obviously got an abortion issue that's going to be front and center in Arizona. You've got Kari Lake, who's probably the most MAGA candidate other than Donald Trump on the ballot. So I think it's probably a very good night for the Harris campaign because you've now got, I think, in politics, it's so important to have targets. So to the extent, I mean, we may find in the Senate race, we'll see, maybe it'll very much mirror now the Harris-Trump race. But to the extent that perhaps Lake is performing more poorly than Trump, the Harris campaign will know who those voters are and can target them. So I think it's really a really problematical night for Donald Trump, because in these battleground states, we know last time they come down to 8, 10, 11,000 votes. It's such a small percentage of the state. So all this stuff matters. So I think it's definitely going to be a case that should produce some headwinds for the Republican ticket in a race that, 10 days ago, Trump had a pretty significant lead. It's very early. You cautioned us in an earlier segment about that. But the polling so far clearly shows that Arizona should be snapping back to be quite competitive.
Yes, this is going to be a close race, as I've been telling folks. I mean, Stuart, along those lines, there was a closely watched House race, Republican primary between Blake Masters, who is a Peter Thiel-backed candidate, I should note, and Abe Hamadeh. Okay, Donald Trump ended up endorsing both of them. What do you make of this?
You could sum up the sort of freak show that the Republican Party has come just by studying this primary. So you had one guy, Blake Masters, who was picked by Peter Thiel. He picked two candidates, J.D. Vance and Blake Masters, in the midterms. Vance won, obviously. Masters lost, but he didn't just lose. He lost after putting out these videos where he was out in the desert with a gun that had some sort of like porn, snuff quality, gun loving weirdness about it. I mean, he is just an odd guy. So he's in this primary with two people that end up being endorsed by Donald Trump. Masters accuses the other Trump endorsee of being a Muslim. I mean, it really is just a race to the bottom. And I think Arizona is just a perfect case for the importance of the youth vote. If you look at that governor's race, the reason that Kari Lake is not governor, though she goes around saying she did win, is because of the votes around the universities and colleges of Arizona. Kari Lake lost those by 15 to 85, right? The governor won those with 85% of the vote. Had that even been 60%, she wouldn't have won. So I think that just shows that's a harbinger, like David's saying, of what could happen come November.
I mean, Maricopa County specifically, I mean, it's not just usually we talk mostly about just the Senate race and then these key House races. But one of the most watched races this cycle was actually Maricopa County Recorder. And the incumbent, a gentleman named Steve Richer, he has been attacked for pushing back on conspiracy theories. David, what do you make of the attention that such local races have gotten in this era?
Well, I think just speaking about Arizona as an example, I mean, I think to the extent you see Republicans willing to basically call BS on the big lie, you've got Kari Lake. By the way, one of the things in 22 that gave us, I think, some optimism, those of us that believe in democracy continuing in this country, was most Republican candidates actually who lost conceded, admit they lost. She was obviously leading the parade of the few that didn't. So to the extent that, the full-on MAGA, election lies, they're basically attacking each other, as Stuart said. That is such a turnoff to, well, a lot of voters, not just suburban, particularly suburban voters. And as you think about how Kamala Harris needs to piece together a win in Arizona and our Senate candidate beneath that, obviously you need to blow out the suburban vote and particularly some of those college areas. As Stuart said, it's kind of the inverse of Trump winning some rural counties 85-15. We can't allow that to happen. We got to get into the 30s. But right now, in some of these areas in suburban Arizona, in college communities all around the country, not just in Arizona, we see outsized Democratic performance, the likes of which I thought I'd certainly never see in my lifetime. So it's kind of a freak show on display there in Arizona. And I think when Kamala Harris is saying we can't go back to that, we need to go forward, let's focus on the future, not Donald Trump wanting to relitigate the past, it's helpful for people to be reminded every day that this is on full display. And again, I think it's an important way to get, and listen, one of the really important things in this race, Simone, it's early, but we've gone from really 10 days ago not being able to say with a straight face that Democrats could compete and win in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, or North Carolina. Those are firmly back in play. And that's incredibly important. You want to have margins.
Absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. The margins are what matter here, folks, and we are watching them. David and Stuart, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. When we come back, an Israeli strike against Hezbollah in Lebanon raises fears of a wider war. We will have the latest for you when the 11th hour continues.
Well, poll results coming in at this hour from the Republican primary for U.S. Senate in Arizona, where Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb is challenging Trump ally Kari Lake for the GOP nomination. The senior correspondent Alicia Acuna is live in Phoenix with the latest on that. Alicia, good evening.
Good evening, Trace. And we're watching the results come in right now. And as of this moment, Republican Kari Lake has a significant lead over Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb. Lake has long been the favorite to win the GOP nomination for U.S. Senate. She will likely take on Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego, who is unopposed. But I will tell you, some in Lake's own party are concerned about her prospects in the general election. Former President Trump is far more popular than Lake in this state that he narrowly lost in 2020. And the Washington Post reports Arizona Republican mega donor Randy Kendrick emailed friends that Lake, quote, cannot win in November. Last night, former President Trump, who endorsed Lake, participated in a tele-rally where he slammed Lake's likely opponent, five-time Democratic Congressman and Iraq War veteran Gallego.
He's a guy that's not respected. He's not respected there. People don't listen to him. They don't take him seriously.
Now, Gallego currently leads Lake in most head-to-head polls. And quickly, I got to give you an update on the GOP primary for Congressional District 8 here. It's a safely red seat, but former President Trump raised some eyebrows when he endorsed both candidates who are leading in that race. So we'll continue to watch the results come in. Trace?
Alicia Acuna live for us in Phoenix. Alicia, thank you.